I've never had to follow a professor before, so I'll do my best and give it a go. So it's great to be here today, and thank you for all the presentations that I've seen so far today. My name's Stuart Murphy. I'm Head of Customer Experience and Communications at Jersey Electricity, and it's been a great opportunity, I think, for us here to not only be able to speak to you, but also to listen to some of the key issues in the farming community today. So, for those of you who are visitors to the island and don't know about Jersey Electricity, we are a vertically integrated utility, and basically what that means is, whereas in the UK, lots of companies would do different parts of the value chain, here in Jersey we're quite small in size, but we do pretty much everything. So that's from importation to generation, distribution, and obviously retailing electricity. Slightly unusual ownership structure because we're both part government owned and listed on the London Stock Exchange. And we're serving around about 50,000 domestic and commercial customers. So really our role in the island is to support the island's transition to zero carbon. We've just heard a lot about the impact of greenhouse gases and the fact that we really have to do something about the climate emergency. So before I kind of go into a bit more detail, we really want to collaborate and partner as much as we possibly can do, and we think that that's the way to take this forward. When we see things as complicated as the climate emergency, it's not for any one government or organisation or individual to solve. It really is about a collaborative effort, really. Now, Jersey's rural economy, and I borrowed this from the government, I must say, because I felt it was a really good description. You know, your sector, the agricultural sector, is really the backbone of the history and the culture and habitat and landscape and reputation of our island. It's a fundamental cornerstone of Jersey. And what we'd like to talk to you about today really is how together we can act and do things which really do make a difference. And that could take the form of many different things, such as the electrification of vehicles long term. But specifically, I want to talk to you about renewables today as one particular focus area. Now, before I do that, I would really like to, as I said, kind of focus on one thing, which is renewables, and is one type of renewables, which is solar. Now, this is about, if you like, harvesting the sun. It's about unlocking value for farmers. And if I can, I'll borrow some words that Charlie Galishon used when we recently worked with Woodside Farm on a community-scale solar array, where he said that farmers use the sun for all our flowers and veg, so now we're just using the sun's energy in a different way. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about solar and thinking about how that could affect farming in the future from a generation point of view. Now, blank screen. I'm going to show a very short video, if I may, from our Chief Executive, Chris Ambler. You've no doubt heard an awful lot in the media recently about COP26, and this is just a few words that we would like to kind of show you today, which kind of brings some of that to life from our perspective.
Climate change is the greatest threat to our planet and life as we know it, and time is rapidly running out to find a solution. At the end of this month, the UK will be hosting COP26, a conference that is seen by many as the best, if not the last chance we have. Around 200 world leaders are expected for this summit, seen as the most crucial ever held. Despite the pandemic and lockdowns, global carbon emissions have continued to rise, along with global temperatures. Although Jersey has made progress, there is so much more to do. Over the last 30 years, Jersey's overall carbon emissions have reduced by almost 40%, despite a 60% increase in the consumption of electricity. This has substantially been achieved as a result of Jersey Electricity's strategy to build a grid to import low-carbon electricity from France instead of generating power on island using oil. Jersey now has access to almost limitless supplies of low-carbon, reliable and affordable power, available on tap when we need it. We've also made progress with other carbon reduction projects. We've created products to encourage customers to switch from fossil fuels to electricity and have doubled this rate of conversion. We've recently built an island-wide smart meter network, 50,000 meters continuously gathering data to help improve network efficiency and give our customers more visibility over energy efficiency and consumption via our MyJE Smart app. We've encouraged the uptake of electric transport by investing in 95 public chargers, providing Jersey with a higher density of chargers per capita than any other town or city in the UK. And although they won't help further decarbonise electricity in Jersey, we're also introducing more local on-island renewables onto the grid. By February this year, we were generating just under 1 million units of local solar power from our 4 community-scale arrays. And we have around 30 more partnership investments in the pipeline. We also continue to explore offshore wind and tidal power, assessing how and when we might transform and diversify our energy mix. Like those global leaders represented at COP26, the Government of Jersey will develop its own goals and climate policies. And we hope that the island will be bold and ambitious. Delivering net zero will be a challenge for every country, but Jersey has real advantages. We have no heavy industry here, short travelling distances, a decarbonised electricity grid with spare capacity, and an island-wide fibre network that boasts the fastest internet speeds in the world to enable rapid deployment of technology in an ever more sustainable way. Jersey's Citizens' Assembly on climate change earlier this year showed that there is clear appetite for zero carbon. There will for sure be difficult decisions ahead, and we know we don't have all the answers, but we're convinced that Jersey could deliver net zero faster and more cost effectively than virtually anywhere else. We encourage everyone in Jersey and all our friends and partners off the island to get involved, share ideas, and help each other create and deliver viable low-carbon solutions. We believe this is a real opportunity for Jersey, an opportunity to build on the island's strengths and to lead. But it's also an obligation to this beautiful island and our children and our children's children. The time for action is now, and we must join forces and take it.
So that kind of video gives you a bit of a flavour, really, of some of the key themes and issues and kind of Jersey Electricity's position with it. But if I may, I'll just kind of drill down into a little bit of detail around that, just to give you a bit more of an overview. So Jersey Electricity's objective is to provide affordable, secure and sustainable power. And that's something that we refer to as the energy trilemma, which is kind of what's on the left-hand side there. What the energy trilemma is 3 things that we need to have a balance in order to serve customers. So it's about being affordable with our power, it's about having secure power and sustainable power. So if any one of those things got out of kilter with the others, then there could be an issue. So, for example, we could have the most sustainable power in the world. We could have potentially a tidal barrage, which a lot of people think is part of the solution, and it could be long-term, which would be very, very sustainable, but would it be affordable? And that's a key issue for us. And we, by placing the customer at the heart of our business, we recognise and we speak to customers and we know how important affordability is. So we've got to strike a balance as an island between those 3 elements when we think about power. And as a company, we must always make sure that we keep you and our other customers at the heart of what we do. So a little bit more. So before we talk about on-island renewables, I think it's really important to stress the current situation and where we are. So the vast majority of electricity that's used in Jersey is imported. 95%, in fact, is imported from France. And that's the situation that we've had in this island since 1984. So for almost 40 years now, we've been importing power. And the reason for that is because we get to use the economies of scale that are available to us in the European network. And that delivers affordable, secure, and sustainable power into Jersey. We have on-island capability. We can meet today's needs from a generation point of view. But in terms of trying to bring over affordable power, this is the way to do it. And the carbon content of this imported power is actually lower than anything that we could produce on island, even solar. Now, the imported power that we have is 2/3 nuclear, 1/3 hydro, which comes from the Laurence tidal barrage. The reality is that we could buy power from anywhere in Europe. It will come through France, but we can buy from anywhere in Europe, and we can buy any type of power. But our current blend of 2/3 nuclear, 1/3 hydro is a good mix. It has renewables in that mix, which is something our customers want to see. but it uses the backbone of nuclear in terms of price and its low carbon position really to support what we're doing right now. Now, we have a long-term supply agreement in place with our partners, our key partners, RTE and EDF in France, and that deal will run until 2027. We keep prices stable because we hedge our currency transactions, and we also make sure that we have a long-term deal in place too. So current deal runs out in 2027, and obviously we'll be discussing what happens beyond that well ahead of time. So still some time to go on this current deal, but it gives us an awful lot. Now, I mention that just to say that that is a good position, but we understand that there is a real demand, a real appetite for renewables on Ireland, something we call energy sovereignty and really kind of taking control. And that'll be a focus of the rest of the presentation. But before I do, it's worth showing you that the chart on the left-hand side there really brings to life what's kind of happened from energy and carbon in particular. So on the bottom there, you've got the years, so it runs from 1990 to 2018, and you have the carbon emissions for Jersey. And in blue at the top, you'll see what comes from power, and beneath that is everything else. So what this is really showing is that since 1998, though, we've effectively decarbonised the electricity system by having such a lot of power imported from Europe. We are in a position with our energy system that the UK would love to be in, because we've taken carbon out of power, and we have an energy source that we can use which can be applied in a much greater extent in other areas. And that's kind of shown on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side in this kind of donut chart, you'll see the different types of energy usage in Jersey. In black, you have oil for petroleum products at 57%, and in red, you've got gas, which is 4%. So getting on there for 60% of all of the energy currently in Jersey is not from electricity, it's from other sources. Now, those sources are all high in carbon content. So when we think about the climate emergency, you can kind of see the size of the challenge for Jersey, even though we've decarbonised the electricity system itself. So collectively, as an island, we have some way to go to really kind of get on top of this issue in line with what the government's ambition is. Now, this is quite an interesting chart because it kind of shows the difference in carbon. So on the left-hand side, what this shows actually is the grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. But basically, these numbers show you kind of proportionally how these different energy types measure up against each other. So on the left-hand side, you'll see 5. Okay, so that's 5 grams. That's the imported power. That's the nuclear and the hydro. That 5 is 95% of Jersey's electricity has that 5 grams on it. The second bar chart, which has got a logo over the top of it, is what happens when we add the energy from waste plants in. Okay, so the energy from waste plants is a government asset. We buy all of the power from it. It's a good situation in terms of we have to do something with it with our refuse, and we take power from that. But it shows you that just 5% of electricity, what that does to our overall carbon content of electricity, takes it from 5 to 24. It's quite a big jump. However, that 24 is 10 times lower than the next fuel type, which is gas, which is at 241, and it's higher again if you look at oil, from that point of view. And on the right, in the grey there, you can see what the UK's position is. So the key takeaway from this is that the electricity that we're able to bring onto the island is significantly lower carbon than anything else. And so as we look to tackle the climate emergency, it does make absolute sense, really, to transition away from these high carbon fossil fuels to something which is much more sustainable. So putting it into context then for agriculture. So on the left-hand side, there's some information supplied by government, and there's different ways of slicing and dicing the data on carbon, but what this shows really is that at 4%, the direct activities that take place on a typical farm will be included in that 4%. There will be other emissions from this sector that will be in transport and also what's being kind of tagged as business. There'll be some farming emissions in there, which just gives you a size of scale really about where the emissions come from in Jersey by different types of sector. Now, looking at options and possibilities for the farming community, there are probably three key areas really, and you'll know more about the ones in blue than I will. So boosting productivity and reducing emissions overall, farmland carbon capture, and on the right there, harnessing renewable energy, which is a real opportunity for us to discuss. I included on the bottom there just something that came up in the press recently to do with a trial in Sark about a solar-powered tractor, quite small, quite innovative. I included it to show that there is real innovation in this sector, and there are people trying new things, albeit it's clearly not probably ready for, for your farms at this time. So where are we now? So solar, kind of a new farming opportunity. So right now, it's exciting, I think, for us as an organisation. We have over 30 opportunities and options that are being evaluated at the moment, all different kind of shapes and sizes, all different types of projects, but it just shows you the level of activity that's taking place behind the scenes, really. And thinking about that opportunity, really, we understand that even though we've got this really strong importation position, we've got a very good position in terms of what comes over from Europe. We understand that people look at the tides, look at the winds, they look at the sun, and they say, why can't we do things on island? And we as an organisation are the island's energy partner, and we're here to answer that. So that's why we're interested in solar. That's why we're interested in diversification of the kind of energy that we generate and consume on this island. So we understand the demand for solar. We also understand that there's good things to be had in diversifying our supply. So it's good to have supply come from different generation sources. That's a real positive. Other benefits would include, for people that have large-scale, commercial-scale solar arrays, is that there's an opportunity there for a secure income. We're able to set these things up for the long term, decades at a time, and we can agree long-term income streams with partners. Lastly, in terms of the real positives there, there's limited impact on buildings, and there's limited impact on soil for these installations in the long term. So, for example, with a ground-based solar array, once those materials are taken away, there's no impact or no negative impact on the soil. If anything, you could argue there's potentially a positive impact by that land being allowed to lie fallow for a long period of time. But there are limitations, and we're not here to kind of say solar is the answer, because it isn't actually. It's a part of a bigger solution to a problem, and it's a part of giving the island greater control over its energy generation. It's presently more expensive to have solar on island than it is to import. It's also higher carbon, unbelievably, to some, than what we import. So it's not the panacea, it's not a silver bullet, but costs will come down the more we do this, and it will come down as the technology evolves and develops, not just in the solar panels themselves, but also in things like batteries, which will help. One of the greatest problems with solar right now is a fairly obvious one, which is that you get most of your solar power at a time when potentially you need it the least, particularly in a domestic setting. Most houses during the day consume very little power. They need their power at night when there is no sun. So solar really, as part of a longer term, a bigger, larger scale solution, cannot exist on its own. It needs to exist as part of a suite of technologies that are kind of working together in unison, really. So in terms of you yourselves today and the wider community, really, we are looking for opportunities to work with you. And when we look at these locations, these are some of the things that we consider. So warehouse roofs that are in good condition. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to put something onto a roof if it's going to be there for decades if there's a construction issue. There's an option to prioritize, of course, low-quality agricultural land. It doesn't make sense in many ways to use premium agricultural land for solar when that places pressure on land. So it's about finding the right sites, and that's a question for the landowner, obviously for the farming community generally, as well as the government from a planning perspective. We ourselves are looking to do what our customers and the government are asking for. We're looking to do more on island solar, but we're sensitive to some of the pressures around this, and it's something that needs to be discussed kind of case by case, really. Interestingly, there is the potential for dual use of land. Something called agrivoltaics, where potentially you could have land used for solar but also used for other things. It could be planting for biodiversity. It could also be with sheep and solar panels being used side by side, which has been trialled. You may have your own views on the practicalities of this, but it does exist, and it is something worthy of discussion and review. From our point of view, it makes sense if it's close to the grid. And basically being close to the grid helps to keep costs down, which helps us to strike better deals with farmers and landowners. And obviously it can't be north-facing. Ideally south-facing, but certainly not north-facing. So that will obviously not give you enough of a yield to make the investment worthwhile. So just one quick case study just to kind of run through. What you'll see here on screen is a fantastic project, the largest solar array in the Channel Islands with Jersey Dairy. And you can see on the left-hand side there just what this looks like in terms of size and scale and the kind of impacts a project like this can have. So this particular community scale array generates 500,000 units a year, which is roughly enough to power 70 homes in Jersey. So a real significant project and something which is material in size, but also will give you a feel for how many solar panels you would need to have in order to power the whole of Jersey. Now, Jersey isn't big enough, quite frankly, to use solar as the answer to generate its needs. You would need too many of these solar panels right now to be able to do that. It's not something we have the space to do, have the size to do. However, it is part of a solution. It's part of a combination of different types of generation capability that can come together and answer the need for energy sovereignty in addition to the low carbon position we already have. So overall, at the minute, we have about 1 million units a year of electricity being generated in this way. It's quite small, actually, but it's growing, and it's something that we're obviously keen to invest in. So in summary, we exist to help you. We exist as a partner of the island. We exist as an energy partner, and we're here to do what the island wants. And the island is telling us that it wants to transition away from fossil fuels, and it wants to tackle the climate emergency. We want to partner with you and explore opportunities for solar if we can do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment in terms of next steps. But there's a clear opportunity to displace fossil fuels, and if we're going to take the climate emergency seriously, that's what we have to do. And we can argue and we can talk about the how and what gives, but ultimately we have to stop burning fossil fuels, and electricity is the low carbon energy source that's here and available right now that can displace those fossil fuels. Finally, we want to work collaboratively, and we want to really we want to drive positive action. That's why we're here today, and that's why we'd like to talk more with you in future. So, final slide then. We would love to explore how low carbon power can help you, how we can do more together, and we can understand your individual circumstances. So, the last thing I would say is let's talk. Thank you.